Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how I make this overlap back vent. This is a very comprehensive tutorial. On the right side this is what it looks like, and on the wrong side this is what it looks like. So please do not forget to subscribe if you enjoy this tutorial. Sit back, relax as I take you on this ride. So the first thing you want to do is iron on the parts where you want to sew your back vent. Iron your interfacing on both the lining and the main fabric, on the two sides of the lining and the main fabric. You also want your main fabric to be longer than the lining. Here my fabric is 2.5 inches longer than my lining, and as you can see I've gone ahead to iron the interfacing on this part like so. You also want the part where the vent will start from, that's the slit. You want it to be 3 inches longer than your original center back, just the way it's been seen. The full video on how I made this skirt is on the channel. You can go and watch the full video on how I made this skirt. But in this tutorial I'm just going to show you how I made this back vent, which is also called a back slit. So the first thing you want to do is roll out. I'm going to be sewing on this line where I marked like so. You want to remember that your zipper would be on the skirt, so from where the zip stopped, you want to start sewing just on that line, and then you stop 0.5 inch before the edge of your fabric. You want to do this on the main fabric, and then on the lining you start at where the zipper will stop, and then you sew and come down 0.5 inch after the line. Just come down 0.5 inch after the line. So here you can see I am sewing the lines. This is my fabric, the right side facing each other. We're going to go ahead. Do not start from the edge of the fabric. You want to come in 0.5 inch. That is very important because you're going to be needing it when sewing this back vent. So as you can see here, I'm sewing on that line. I'm going to sew and stop at where my zipper will stop. The next thing you want to do after you've done this is to notch at the corner of that stitch. You notch at the corner of the stitch. I'm going to show you where I did the notching. Then on the lining you just want to sew this straight line like I've indicated here, and then you come down from that end 0.5 inch like so, and always remember to back stitch. So this is where I'm notching that corner on my fabric. I've gone ahead to notch. You try not to notch into your stitch. Try not to notch into the stitch. After you've done this, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and iron. We are going to be ironing, opening the seams, and then we are going to be pressing it open. You want to do the same thing on your lining. You do the same thing on your lining. You want to press open the seams like so. So when you've done that, as you can see, I've pressed open the seam. This looks very neat. I've pressed open the seam. This is the lining, and I also did the same thing on the main fabric. So after I've done that, the next thing I did here was to mark out. Now this, according to this can be your preference. You can actually take the left side or the right side. So you face the wrong side of the lining, look facing up, and then you want to mark out like so. You can actually do it on the other side, but preferably I like doing it on the left hand side of my lining. So I've marked out this part, and then the next thing you want to do is come in 0.5 inch seam allowance. You want to come in and then mark it like I'm doing here. After you might have done that, you want to cut on the new line, that's the 0.5 inch line. This is going to be a seam allowance when we are stitching the back vent. You also want to notch the corner like so, because you're going to be needing it. Is very important. Now after I've done that, you place the wrong side of the fabric facing the wrong side of the lining, like you're seeing me doing here. Make sure the edges are well aligned, especially the top parts and the sides. Make sure they are well aligned. After you've done that, you flip your lining like so. You flip it, you pick this other part of the lining that was not cut out, and then you pick the corresponding side of the fabric. Remember that 0.5 inch we didn't sew into, it's now going to come into place. So let's go over it again. With the wrong sides facing each other, you flip your lining, you pick this other part of the lining, and then you want to sew it to the corresponding parts of the fabric. Now as you can see, I'm stitching these two pieces together. You stitch it down to where the lining ends, but then you don't want to go all through to the end of the lining. You still want to leave a 0.5 inch seam allowance for joining to the fabric, for joining the hem of the fabric to the hem of the lining. So you don't want to stitch down to the end. You're going to leave a 0.5 inch seam allowance. Please do not forget all these seam allowances that you'll be needing. You need it for stitching. So as you can see, I've just left that 0.5 inch for stitching. Then you want to do the same thing to the other side of the back vent. You want to do the same thing, but this part is quite tricky because of that notch we gave. It can be very tricky when sewing. But then what you want to do is that the inner part of that notch should correspond to the top of the fashion fabric, or to make sure this is well aligned, you want the hem of the edge of the lining at the hem area to be equal with the hem area of the other side. That's the first side that you sewed. You just want it to, you know, match up, just like I'm indicating here. Like you want the both ends of the lining to be equal. That way you know that it is well aligned. You don't want to come up like this, no, you want to come down just like it is. Because of that notch you did initially, you want to come down and then you sew. Make sure this is well aligned. Cross check and recheck, especially with the hem part. Make sure the hem of the two, the down part of the two hems are corresponding and they are equal. Then after you've ensured this, you want to go ahead and stitch. You stitch down, and also do not stitch to the end. You want to leave your 0.5 space or your 0.5 inch for the joining to the hem, like I'm doing so. Now when you've done, the next thing we are going to do is arrange this and then go ahead and press all we've done. You just want to press the seam to make it neatly. Now when you're pressing, make sure the two ends, that's the side seam part of the fabric and that of the lining, is equal. You want it to be equal. So we are going to go ahead and press it, you know, just press it. As you can see, it's already coming out beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and press this. You see that part I was talking about, where I wanted the two ends of the lining to meet. So yeah, I've pressed it. I've pressed down the seams. I've pressed down all the places I needed. Next thing you're going to do is flip it from the top part like this to, you know, go inside the fabric. You just want to flip it inside. See what I'm doing here? You look at it, tuck that part inside, tuck the rough edge inside. You flip it like so, and then you hold the two parts of the lining facing each other and the two parts of the fabric. You want to go ahead and stitch these four pieces together. You're going to stitch it together. That's the stitch that is going to close up that opening. So you do that. When you're done stitching, the next thing we are going to be doing is to now finish up our hem. So yeah, I'm notching. Well, I was notching. I didn't notch into the corner very well, so I went ahead to do that properly, so that it's going to enable me to hold down this 4-piece together to hold it neatly. So yeah, I'm sewing it down. After stitching, I'll show you what it looks like on the lining part and on the right side. So this is what it looks like after stitching. This is the right side of your fashion fabric. It looks very clean and beautiful, and then the stitch or the joining now shows on the lining part, but then it doesn't show on the right side. Now the next thing we are going to go ahead and do is to finish up our hem. Now because of the lining, the hem is just going to turn up to join with the lining. Remember, when you are cutting your skirts, like I said, I did a full tutorial on this skirt. This is a pencil skirt. I did a full tutorial. Please, you can go and watch that tutorial so that you see how I did the pattern drafting and how I came up with what's this particular skirt. So what you want to do basically is make sure the length of your skirt is about 2 inches longer than the lining and than the original length of the skirt. So for instance, if the length of your skirt is 20 inches, you want to make it 22, so that when you now turn it to meet with the lining, it's going to give you original 20 inches. I hope you understand. So that's what I've done here. Now we are joining the hem of the first hem. The first hem, that's the left hand side, and then I'm going to seal that up. After sealing it up, the next thing you want to do is trim off the bulk at the corner. This corner, you trim it off like so, just so that when you flip it to the right side, there is no bulk on that corner part of your fabric. So yeah, I've trimmed off this bulk, and then I'm just going to turn it with a turner or with the pointy part of my scissors like I'm doing. After I've done this, the next thing I'm going to do is finish up the other parts of the hem. Now that part is the very tricky part, and I want you all to pay close attention. This part of the hem, that's the part where I cut out that lining, is the tricky part. So as you can see here, I'm looking for a particular point. Number one thing you should have at the back of your mind is that you want the two parts of this skirt, or the two parts of the hem like so, to be equal. So yeah, I'm trying to make them align so that they are equal at the end, so that one part is not going to get shorter than the other one. So with this now, I've been able to equalize it. And then the pointy part, that pointy part is a very important part. I'm trying to get that this pointy part now. So with that, now I've gotten it, I'll go ahead and mark it. You can iron just so you don't miss it. You can iron, or you can just use your hand to iron. Then what you want to do is just bend it like I'm doing, you know, still to get that pointy part. You can go ahead and pin it before cutting off. So let's go over it again. Now to get this pointy part, I flipped it, make sure it was equal with the other part of my back vent. After I've done that, like I said, you can go ahead and press it. You can press it just so you use the crease for direction as a guide. Then when I've gotten that pointy part, you want to fold it like so. Like me personally, I went ahead and I marked it with a chalk, because this can be very tricky. If you don't get it right, you get a very tacky back vent, and it doesn't always look good. So I've marked that pointy part. Then the next thing I did here was to pin it. I pinned it down with my pin before I cut it, because what we are trying to do basically is to cut out this bulky part of the fabric, this excess parts flying up here. We don't need it. So I'm going to go ahead and pin before cutting. You want to ensure you go through this step, please, so that you get a perfect finishing, a perfect back vent. So yeah, I'm pinning down. I'll still unpin it, but I love pinning before cutting. you want to make sure you do that, especially if you're a beginner. So when I'm doing this tutorial, I try to carry everyone along, both the beginner and those who are very much advanced in sewing. So you pin down and then you cut the excess, bearing in mind that you need a seam allowance. So as you can see, I did not cut down to where the pin is. The pin just mimics the final stitch I'm going to be giving. So you want to give a seam allowance. Personally, I gave a 0.5 inch seam allowance. So after that, I still went ahead to still mark that line, that's the crease line, with a chalk, because I don't want to miss it for any reason. Any mistake in this part, you're going to get a very tacky back vent, and I don't like the finished look. So make sure you know, either you press it down or you mark it with a chalk like so. And then when you're done doing this, the next thing you want to do is unravel and then turn it to the wrong side and stitch. So after I've done this, I'm going to open it up. Now when you didn't do all these things, this is the part where you tend to miss. So as you can see my points here, you can see the lines I need to sew. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'll stitch that down. So you want to stitch this down starting from that pointy edge. You stitch it down and then you leave a 0.5 inch seam allowance that you're going to be using to join the fabric, that's the hem of the fabric, to the hem of the lining, just like we've been doing for other ones. So as you can see, I've gone ahead to sew, leaving my 0.5 inch seam allowance for joining the both sides of the hem. And then you go ahead for every corner, make sure you trim off the excess and then push it out. You trim off the excess to eliminate the bulk, and then you push it out like so. After that, it's already looking beautiful. The next thing we want to do is to now seal up this part like so. I'm going to flip it back to the wrong side and then just sew it like you're seeing me do. Make sure the edge aligns, that's the edge, especially at the side seam, make sure they align beautifully. As you can see, I started it from the side seam and now sewed into the center back. So that's what I did basically. I made sure the edge of my lining and my fashion fabric aligned before I stitched. After that, I'll go ahead and flip it to the right side and then give it a good press, and then we'll see what the finished look looks like. Please, if you really enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe, see what it looks like, see what the finished look looks like. This is what it looks like on the wrong side. Please do not forget to subscribe to this tutorial as I bring you amazing video tutorials every week. Please do not forget to like, share, and drop a comment. If you have any comments, drop it and I'll do well to respond. Thank you so much for watching this video and for supporting this channel. See you next time. Bye.